Hey guys, Rick Taylor here with KS USA. Today we're going to talk about how to service your LEV Circuit electronic dropper. Okay, so some of the basic tools that we're going to need to service KS dropper we'll go over here. If there are additional or specific or specialty tools for your particular model that we're going to go over, we'll discuss those in further detail a little bit later on in the video. So you want to start with a good quality biodegradable degreaser. We tend to like the Simple Green cleaners here. You can dilute them down to whatever ratio you want. They wash away easily, and they're not caustic or damaging. So a good degreaser. For lubrication, we recommend either the KS Post Paste, or if you don't have that available, the Slick Oleum is basically the same formula. It's designed specifically for suspension use, more specifically air oil systems, so it's a really good lubrication to use. We don't recommend using automotive grease because they tend to be a higher viscosity and can cause poor performance of your dropper if you use those. A pair of soft jaws so that you can hold the seat post. The one that we have here happens to have a round clamp hole in it, but if you can't find one of these in your local market, you can also do a V-block, which a lot of times you can get those from Amazon or from a local hardware store, a machine shop supply. Those kind of places have them. And essentially you just need something that you're going to be able to clamp and hold the tube. If you don't have access to that, don't panic. You can also use the bicycle frame to hold the post in place while we unthread the collar. We'll go over that in a little more detail later. Utility knife, we generally will use this just to help us remove the guide bushings. So these are handy to have. If you don't have one, you can do it by using your fingernail, but I'd recommend if you can find a utility knife, definitely grab that. A set of Allen wrenches. So you're going to need from a 6 down to a 1.5 millimeter set. So they can either be a T-handle like this, or you can have one of the little pocket folding ones work great too. But just make sure they're good quality so you don't end up rounding or stripping out any of the bolts. Last would be a strap wrench. And the strap wrench is basically to remove the collar. You'll need these on nearly all models of KS dropper, with the exception of the A12 Integra and the Rage I. So those two will use a little different system that we'll talk about later. But the strap wrench you can get from most hardware stores, and they're generally used for fitting pipes that you don't want to do damage to. So if they're a chrome finish or something, these allow you to grab and turn pipe without damaging the surface. So local hardware stores, and again, this is called a strap wrench. And then we definitely like to use a microfiber towel for cleaning and the internal parts and everything. These work really well with the degreaser. They tend to take all of the debris off of your post. So you can get these through most hardware stores, or if you have a Costco in your area, they do their Kirkland brand of towels that work really well. Okay guys, so for your LEV circuit, we're going to go ahead and use some soft jaws to clamp the mast. And you can use soft jaws, or you could also use your bicycle frame. You clamp this in, torque to 5 Newton meters, and then you can use the strap wrench to loosen this up. And a couple things that we didn't note on the tools you're going to need are an adjustable wrench, which is one option. Preferable option would be a 13 millimeter box wrench or a 13 millimeter socket and ratchet, and we'll show you how to use those in just a minute. So we're going to go ahead and clamp the post with our soft jaws. Now, it's not necessary to deflate the cartridge. In fact, it's preferable not to when you are doing the service on it. You're not going to do anything with the hydraulic oil inside or anything like that. So there's really no reason to depressurize this. What you will want to do though is you can use your wrench, and you can see how nicely that fits in there. If you're using the adjustable wrench, you're probably going to have to grab it this way, and then you may have to get like an Allen or something as a cross tool in here to turn it, because it is recessed. So I'm doing this with the open wrench so it's easier for you guys to see. If you have a deep socket, 13 millimeter, that'll slide on there and work really well as well. But We're going to put that on this end nut, and we're going to turn it. And probably what's going to happen on this, when you do this at home, is this end cap is going to unthread. We're going to need to take that out anyway, so it's not really a problem that it's unthreading instead of the nut. If yours unthreads the nut first, that's fine. We can go back in and take the cap out after the fact, but we're going to unthread this. And so essentially what we'll want to do now, we'll set that wrench aside for a second, and we're going to flip it around. If you're doing this at home, you don't have to flip it. I'm doing this so you can easily see what we're doing. Okay, we're going to take our strap wrench. We're going to put that here. Oops, make that a little tighter. Okay, now you'll notice the first pull that I did, I kind of gave it a good tug and not just smooth pressure. The reason is because there's a little bit of thread lock from the factory that holds this collar in. And I'm just using the wrench instead of doing it by hand because I can feel, you can see the thread lock here. I can feel it was still pretty tight. So if yours is tight like that, because we've used quite a bit of the thread compound, just continue to use the strap wrench. If you feel it's loose and easy to turn, then you can just do it by hand, okay? So I noticed that our band bushing is already starting to pop out, so we're gonna take that out right now, set that aside. Okay, now, if you have soft jaws or V-block, you wanna go ahead and use those for this stanchion, or compression rod, I guess we should call it, and we'll clamp that in the vise. Okay, now if you don't have a good V-block, you can use the rubber from your strap wrench and clamp around and tighten it in, or you can fold up several layers of a rag. I will caution you, if you're using a rag, the teeth on here are serrated, and they'll cut through a rag pretty easily, and if those serrated teeth get into this surface, you ruin the cartridge and you have to replace it. So it's probably a safer bet if you don't have the rubber strap to use or the V-blocks, to get a couple pieces of wood, kind of a softer wood like pine works good, and put the blocks of wood in between and then clamp it, because that way the wood's not going to do any damage. This is anodized aluminum, and you know, a fairly costly cartridge, and if yours is in good working order, you don't want to damage it. So just be careful with that. Okay, now going back to where we were earlier, we're going to unthread this air cap, and we're not letting the air out of it, we're just unthreading this to get it out of our way. Now, chances are yours probably came apart just like this. If your post came apart where this nut came off and this part stayed in the post, don't panic, that's totally fine. You'll just omit this step that we're doing now, and then when we go to pull it apart, you'll just proceed to that step. But for most of us, you're gonna put the wrench on here. Now that this is clamped, we're gonna slowly and carefully turn it. The reason I'm slowly turning it is this is alloy, and if you yank it and it slips, you're gonna tear up the nut. So you don't wanna do that. Okay, now when this was put on at the factory, you'll see there's just a little kind of a burr that's created from this lock ring. We're gonna set that aside for a second. I wanna show you this lock ring. Okay, so the lock ring bites into the nut there. So when we put this back together, we wanna make sure that the side with that little burr that was created goes back against the lock nut when we put it on. So just remember that when we go to reassemble. Okay, so then under that lock ring, lock washer, was our bottom out bumper was on here, and then our end cap. So we took the end cap off, we'll set that aside. We wanna take our bottom out bumper out, set it aside. And then we're gonna carefully slide this apart. Now keep in mind that band bushing fell out earlier. If yours didn't fall out, it may still be in here. So just look for that as you're pulling it apart. And I'm pulling it out slowly because these bushings, if you yank them out, can have a tendency to go flying. So just gently pull that out of there. We'll set the mass tube aside. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and use the utility knife and we can catch the edge of these bushings. There's a metallic bushing and there's a POM bushing. Metallic bushing is at the bottom, the POM bushing is at the top. The POM creates preload so you don't get side-to-side rattle. And then the metallic bushing is a higher load bushing that carries the rotational force and also the fore and aft load. So it's going to be important when we put this back together that they go in that same order. Okay, so we'll set all those aside. Now we take our seal collar, pull it off, and then I like to take a little bit of degreaser in our microfiber towel. And let's go ahead and clean the whole stanchion and the compression rod. And we can set that aside. Now we're gonna, with the same degreaser and towel, we can clean the seal head. So the DU bushing is in there, as well as the wiper. So you get that whole collar clean. Then we're gonna take some grease. And we're gonna basically load up the cavity that's between those two wiper seals with grease. And so the reason we do this is it pre-lubes the wiper and bushing as it goes through, but it also, that being filled with grease, creates a water barrier. So if you're in inclement weather, it helps keep water and things from getting down past the seal and into your post, just increases service life for you. So we're gonna go ahead and slide that back on. Set that aside, and then we're going to clean these bushings. And so just a little degreaser, your microfiber towel. You want to take a look at them and make sure that they're cylindrical, that there's no flats worn in them, no premature wear. Same thing with your POM bushings. Just make sure everything's in good working order. If they're worn out or damaged, you can get these through your local bike shop. But if they're not worn or don't show any signs of damage at all, go ahead and reuse them. One little trick we're going to do, if you put these bushings in and you don't put anything in to hold them, they kind of fall back out. So a little bit of grease in that slot before you put the bushing in. We're going to put the bushing at the bottom, and then we're going to put the POM bushing at the top. And then I have a little extra grease on my finger, so I'll smear a little bit of grease over the top of them. And then I'll go to the next one. And again, we've deposited that grease inside. So when we put that in, push it into the grease, now they're solid in there. They're not going to fall back out on you. So we're going to put a little more grease on top of that one. Same thing here. Metal bushing at the bottom, POM at the top, and smear a little more grease on them. Okay, so we'll set that aside. Then we're going to take our mass tube, and again, a little bit of degreaser. And we're just going to push that microfiber towel down in there, kind of turn it around, pull that back out, and then you can kind of look up to the light and make sure that that's clean and free of debris inside. Once you get it all clean, just take a dollop of grease. You're going to run that all inside there. Just get a good layer in there. Now we're going to take our cartridge, and if you put your middle finger, index finger, and thumb on those three bushings, and I like to line them up right in the center of where the POM and metal bushing are. You can hold those in place. Take the mass tube, you're going to slide it down, and then rotate it until it drops in like that. And then as you push this down, keep your fingers pressing pressure in on the bushings and slide down and it'll go right in. You want to be careful of this step because if the bushing pops out and you're not holding it, and you force the tube down, you could damage the bushing and then you've got to replace them. Okay, so now we're going to take our band bushing and we're going to slide that in. Then you just kind of start at one end and work your way. I like to start at the end that's the closed end and kind of work my way around to the open ends. It seems to go in easier. Take your utility knife, don't use the cutting edge, but just use the side of the blade. Push that in. You want to seat that in first. Don't use the collar to seat it because if it moves out of place and you tighten it down, you're going to damage that bushing and it will have to be replaced. We're going to go ahead and tighten this down by hand. Okay, and then we're gonna give it a good crank by hand, and with the degreaser, we're gonna degrease it and get it clean. Now our next step is to put the end cap on. Oop, take a step back. We're gonna first put the bottom out bumper on. Then we're gonna put the end cap in. We're gonna put our lock washer on. And again, we talked about that nut. Make sure you look at it and find the spot that had the little burr on it. That goes down against that lock washer. Okay, we're gonna put our soft jaws on here. We're gonna tighten that down. Now, this part's important. This is aluminum. It's bored all the way through, so it's a hollow aluminum shaft. If you go cranking on this too tight, you'll break it off. We're gonna want to tighten until that lock washer flattens out. So you're gonna have the two ends of the lock washer like this. You're gonna wanna just tighten down until they're level, until they're even. And don't tighten any more than that, because again, you can damage this compression rod if you over tighten it. Okay, so I can kind of feel when it starts to have resistance. And if I look there, I can see that those two ends have now flattened out. Okay, so that's good enough. Now we're gonna take this out. We're gonna put our soft jaws on the mast. And I just like to pull up here. You can push here too, but I like to pull here because I feel like I have better control than when I'm trying to jam that in that way. And I just pull until it makes contact. Then you should be able to just thread this. And if you want, you can pull a little tension on it this way. And I can actually feel by putting my hand here as I tighten it, as this is threading in, I can feel it feeding the top of the post up. So I know it's actually caught the threads and now it's going. Okay, and once I get that to where it touches, we're only gonna turn it a tiny bit, like that much. That's it. You don't wanna over tighten it because again, you're turning against a hollow shaft. You can break it. So now, I'm gonna go ahead and thread our top cap on, or our valve cap rather, on. And there you go, ready to go back on your bike.